This is 𝗨𝗶𝘀𝗀 Now with John and Rosemary Malkovich.
Hello and welcome to 𝗨𝗶𝘀𝗀 Now. I want to thank you for joining us today. I find that it's interesting when we talk with different people that are working for the Lord. And in particular, you know, we decide when we're growing up that we're going to be this and that. But when we give our lives fully to the Lord, He can use us in ways that I don't know.
He might change our minds.
That's right. And so today we're very privileged to meet a couple who are missionaries. They are working in...
Current day missionaries.
That's right. And they're working on an island remote from Australia, quite a long way away. But, you know, we want to welcome you both, Dr. Mark Turnbull and his wife, Naomi. It's great to have you here because you have incredible stories.
Thank you. Thank you for having us on the screen.
Yeah,
you know,
we're happy to have you here.
I often think when I was growing up, I wanted to be this and I wanted to be that. But, you know, sometimes when you discover Jesus and He becomes part of your life, He wants you to do something. And the Bible is full of promises, but we have to be able to give ourselves fully to Him. And we'll be talking about that in this program, and I know we're going to do another program which you'll be interested in too. So
let me read Mark's Bible verse.
Yes.
And it is a very good one on the topic that you're talking about, John. And it's 2 Corinthians 9 and verse 8. And the Bible says, "And God is able to make all grace abound toward you, that ye always having all sufficiency in all things, may abound to every good work." Now, missionary work is good work. This verse is talking about you having everything you need to do it. So why is it that you've chosen it?
Thank you, Rosemary. This text has become very meaningful to us because if you look at this text, there's actually 7 absolutes. It says all grace, all sufficiency, all things, always, and every good work, and then the 2 words abound. The word abound occurs twice. All of those words are very abundant, aren't they? And it's kind of like a package promise that contains a lot of other promises, you might say. Like, I don't think anybody can really find the most powerful promise in the Bible because every promise is relevant in different situations. But for us as missionaries, this one has special significance because it's saying that God is able to make all grace abound towards those who do His work. We always have all sufficiency in all things, we may abound to His work. So He wants us to be involved in mission. And what we're looking at here is actually a conditional promise. Because even though it doesn't sort of specify a condition in there, it's actually saying that if you're willing to be involved in His work, then everything is for you.
It's reassuring, isn't it?
Yeah.
It also says that you may abound to every good work, not just to work, but to every good work.
Yeah.
So it's huge.
Yeah, it's massive. It's really serious, this promise.
It's all encompassing.
That's it. You know, when we were getting involved in this project, we were starting to look at the promises and look at the conditions because we felt like we needed the Lord to be with us in everything that we were doing. But when we came across this text, it seemed to have an all-inclusive, open-ended promise. As long as we're involved in His work, we don't have to worry. God will provide for us. And that's what's happened.
That's right.
Yeah.
It's exciting, isn't it?
Yeah.
To know that God can do anything. And I would encourage you to take time in the Word of God and find out the God we're talking about. And in particular Jesus, because He's the one that empowers us and gives us the opportunity to live with God forever. Naomi, you've chosen a Bible text and we're going to find it in Joshua chapter 23 and verse 14. And the Bible says like this, "And behold, this day am I going the way of all the earth. And you know in all your hearts and in all your souls that not one thing have failed of all the good things which the Lord your God spake concerning you. All are come to pass unto you, and not one thing have failed thereof." Can you testify to that? Tell us about this verse.
Yes, so when we were thinking about where we would go, because we were thinking about missionary work, and we just wanted to be sure that God would be with us, that it was God's doing and not our own. And I often think of Moses and Joshua. They didn't want to lead those children of Israel unless God was going to be with them. And I guess we felt the same way. We didn't want to go and do this if it was just our own idea. We wanted to be sure that God was leading. And then, since having evidence that it was God's leading, seeing these things happening, we're really convinced that God was the one leading. And then as we've stepped into that role and been there now for almost 14 years, that we can see that nothing has failed of His promises. So we have, lived through that experience and seen that it is true. God keeps His promises, and He's there to meet the needs that come up.
So how important, you've mentioned how important was it for you to know that God was leading you and what you were doing, Mark?
When I was younger, I was working with the church in Zimbabwe, and I had an experience where I kind of got discouraged and I ran away from the work, and I felt like God wasn't with us, and we had so many things going wrong, didn't we? And after that experience, I think God taught me the lesson: you need me with you. You need to have God's presence with you. Otherwise,
need to focus on God.
And so we were really serious about this, and we just kept on praying. Please, Lord, we want you to be with us. We can't do this without you. And it was so important for us to know that God was with us. And so when we did launch this project, God answered His prayer, all those prayers that we prayed, and we have really seen how the Lord's blessed abundantly since we've been there.
Even in my own experience, I've been through all sorts of different things, and some really hard times, and some easy times. But when I look back, all the hard times I went through, God got me through it all. And I can look back and confidently say that God has not failed in providing all of my needs. He has promised that God will provide your needs according to His riches in glory, and that if you focus first on His kingdom, all the other things you need will come to you, and God has been faithful.
Well, it's not as if we haven't had hardships. We've had lots of hard times while we've been in Vanuatu. We've had serious difficulties.
But He gets you through, doesn't He?
But because we've sensed God's presence with us, it's made the difference.
Yeah.
The same with what we're doing.
Yeah.
I just want to say to the viewers, being a Christian is not a bed of roses. It's actually, there are trials, but they are for the benefit of us, that we are able to turn to God, because then we realise with God, the Bible says all things are possible.
But you grow.
But we have to learn that experience. It just doesn't come unless we experience the hard times.
John, the only thing we absolutely have to have is God's presence with us.
That's right.
And we just hold on to Him and make sure that we don't go away from Him. Everything's going to work out.
I'm sure there's a lot of viewers out there who are looking and saying, well, who are these people? And I just want spend a little bit of time to find out about you. And I'm sure you're not from the same country, so that's interesting in itself. But where do you come from, Mark? Where were you born?
Okay, I was born in Southern Africa, Zimbabwe, what's now called Zimbabwe, previously Rhodesia. I grew up in a Roman Catholic family. When I was 18 years of age, I joined the Seventh-day Adventist Church.
At 18?
How?
Yeah. Well, actually, my father was killed when I was 17, and I was I went into searching mode. I think the Lord was working on me, and I was actually considering becoming a Roman Catholic priest, believe it or not, at that time. Because I really looked up to our local priest, who was a Jesuit priest. He was very dedicated, and I was amazed at this guy. He seemed to be so serious about following God. But because of that desire to sort of find myself, I ended up coming to Australia, and I was on a working holiday visa going around Australia, working in various places, meeting travellers, people who were just on the move from various countries in Australia. And when I got to we got to Sydney, I was staying in King's Cross, which is not the best part of town.
No.
No, it's a popular place for backpackers and things.
That's it. And I was staying in a backpacker hotel, and I was with a friend from the US. We went down to Circular Quay for a drink. And at that time I was a drinker and a smoker. And we went down to 𝗧𝗵𝘃𝗀𝗃, and we met these young people who really stood out from the crowd. There was a group of young people from a church called Waitara Church. I didn't know what Waitara, who they were or where they were from. But when I met these people, I was so taken aback by what they were doing. They were singing hymns on the street, and I thought, this is very weird. But it's good. I thought, that's good. These are young people who are really spiritual. And what are they doing on the street doing this for, you know? And they were giving out books. And one of the books they had was called Cosmic Conflict. And I saw it and I thought, this looks like science fiction. This is weird. These people are weird. But I was interested anyway, and I just started asking questions. My friend was from the States, and he saw it on the back or in the index there, it said, American Prophecy. And he was very defensive of America. So when he saw that, he wanted to know, were they pro-America or against America?
Uh-huh.
And pretty soon, I think he heard some negative comments somewhere, I don't know. And he started getting kind of aggressive with the people he was talking to. But I was really intrigued, and when they started talking about Bible prophecy, I was just completely, because they mentioned something about the beast in Revelation 13, probably not sort of following protocol.
All this funny stuff.
All this funny stuff about beasts, and you know, probably weren't doing the best way of witnessing to someone on the street, but I was very unoffended. It didn't offend me at all. I just wanted to know what they believed, and I just wanted to check it out. And I just asked question after question after question. And eventually this choir on the street, they all packed up and went home, and I was talking to one guy called John Jones, and he knew his Bible like I've never met anybody before or since who knew his Bible like him. Mm. And he could, every single question I had, he had a Bible answer. And that was very new to me, because I never met people who really believed in the Bible, seriously.
Let alone knew what it said.
Yeah, well, I was just thinking, you know, we follow the church, because the church teaches what, you know, about God, and
yes.
that's what we follow. But this guy, he explained everything from the Bible, and that was new to me. And I thought, how can he have everything based on the Bible? So I kept on asking him harder and harder questions, as hard as I could get, you know. And every single question, he had the answer, and it wasn't like he didn't just know where to find the text, but he seemed to know it off by heart. And he would point to it and read it to me without looking at the Bible. And I was just thinking, what's going on here? This guy knows his whole Bible. He knows everything in the Bible. So I was very amazed. Maybe that picture of him wasn't reality, but that's what it looked like to me. Mm. And so at the end of the conversation, I said to him, because when I grew up, we used to go to church, the Catholic Church, and the people who seemed to be the most active were the people who went to prayer meetings. They were the ones that seemed to be more on fire for God. So in my mind, I wasn't thinking of church, you know, I wasn't thinking of churches. I was thinking of prayer meetings. This guy must be one of those the kind of guy that goes to a prayer meeting. So I said to him, do you go to prayer meeting? And he said yes. And I think he was surprised by my question. And so I said, where? And he wrote down the address, gave me a book called Steps to Christ. And in the address, in the front, he wrote the address of the prayer meeting. So Wednesday night, I turned up that prayer meeting. When I went there, all these young people, they seemed to be so on fire for God. And one of them got up and apologized and said, I'm sorry for what I did on the weekend when we were street witnessing. That's the same guy who was giving out the books to me.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, and I was thinking, his name is Richard Robertson, and I was thinking, what is he apologizing for? But what he apologized for was just having a bit of a bad attitude or something, and everybody was sort of amazed that he was apologizing for this. And I just thought, this guy's so humble, and these people are so spiritual, and they just love God so much. And I just thought, I want to be with these people. And so I started, the very next Sabbath, I was out with them street witnessing, and I joined these people. I didn't even know what their names, who they were.
Is that right?
But I was with them, keeping the Sabbath, following their foods, you know, doing living their lifestyle before I knew who they were.
But they gave you books?
They gave me books, and I did read a lot, and then eventually I was baptized. Yeah.
Yeah, I just want to come back to your family. How many siblings in your family?
I have a brother and 2 sisters. Yeah, they're all in Southern Africa. My whole family's in Southern Africa.
South Africa, yeah.
I was going to say with what happened to you in 𝗪𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗃, that I was involved in street witnessing.
Right.
When I first came, before I was
Okay.
a Seventh-day Adventist.
Right.
The young people I knew
Okay.
were doing that, and I got involved. And if you have the opportunity as young people especially, or anybody, it's really a wonderful ministry to be able to do that. And you can find people like Dr. Mark, you know, all these years later, he's still a strong Seventh-day Adventist. It's not like you've slacked off or something.
Yeah.
But you can find people who are searching for the truth
I like
by
the...
handing out literature, singing hymns or whatever, and you know, spiritual songs,
Yeah.
Bible verses on the street, and you can touch people's hearts.
I just want to say, Rosie mentioned slacked off. I like the concept where you grow.
Yeah.
And when you learn something and it's the truth, you hold on to it, you move forward with it, and then God is able to use you. And He's done that. Your life has been an evidence of that, Mark.
Yeah, you know, looking back, just recently we went down to 𝗪𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗃 and we saw the place. It sort of brought back memories, and it's just amazing how significant it was that we went down to 𝗪𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗃 that night. It's just phenomenal. It's just so phenomenal.
Well, what about you, Naomi? What's your background?
I grew up in a little country town in Australia that used to be called the biggest little town in Australia.
I like that.
Really?
𝗪𝗵𝘁𝗀𝗶𝘀𝗀𝗃.
Hey, say it again.
𝗪𝗵𝗶𝘀𝗃,
It's
yeah.
how far? It's about how many hours? 7 hours north of where we are here?
It's quite a
7 or 8
drive from
hours.
here, yes. So that's where I grew up, and I grew up outside of the town, out in the bush. So I had a pretty country bumpkin style upbringing. But we enjoyed life out there in the country, learning how to cross flooded creeks on a flying fox and
Having lots of fun. So you had a wonderful childhood. It sounds like you had a wonderful childhood.
it was good out there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Your parents were Seventh-day Adventists?
Yes, they were. They took us to church every Sabbath, and I grew up going to Sabbath school, and I had, you know, a Christian school and different activities like that, and Christian friends. So I think I remember when I got to about 12 years of age, really seriously thinking about, you know, for my future, what am I going to be doing? Because my older brothers and sisters had sort of gone off doing their own things, and I just remember feeling this strong conviction that this is God's church and this is the truth, and I really wanted to make a commitment. So I started having baptismal studies after a couple of years, and I was baptized when I was about 15.
And tell us who baptized you.
Yes, a pastor called Mike Browning, who I just bumped into the day before yesterday. So I haven't seen him since, I think, 1987 or something. So it was good to catch up with him again.
Isn't that amazing? Our own Mike Browning, who is in charge of our Sabbath school program, was the one who baptized you.
Let God speak.
Yeah.
And we'd encourage you to take time to have a look at that. That's a study on the Bible that we hold every week. We film it here, and it's aired every week on Friday evening and Thursday evening. And it's a terrific Bible study. So if you haven't thought about it, have a look at Let God Speak. Getting back, so you did you have any in sort of indelible impressions from God that you're going to be a missionary one day?
Not as such, but as I was growing up, I read a lot of stories of missionaries, and I just loved missionary stories. And I always thought, one day I want to be a missionary. And I never realised that would really come true, but
Well,
that's
what
what's
did you
God
do?
done.
What did you do when you left school?
When I left school, I was interested in floral art, but I couldn't get into that type of work immediately. So I ended up doing a course in secretarial studies, and I thought, what am I doing here? This is not the place for me. But God had a purpose in that too, because I rely on that a lot now in the work that I do. So I did a 1-year secretarial course at TAFE. Then I got accepted into the floral art work that I wanted to do, working with a florist, and I'd worked there for about maybe 18 months or something. And that was a little bit of a challenge, because she said, really, I need someone who's going to work with me on Saturdays, because that's when we have all the big preparations for weddings and everything. And I said, sorry, I can't do that. And so I lost my job for a while. But then after a little while, she called me again. She said, I haven't been able to find anyone else to help me. You're still willing to come? I said, sure. So I was like an apprentice to her with working in the, doing flower arranging and bouquets. And
that really is an art form.
Yeah, and I loved it.
Something I can't do.
And then as I was working there, the Holy Spirit was sort of working on my heart too, and I thought, as much as I love this work, I'm not really doing everything that I feel God wants me to do. I think there's something more. And I started looking around, and I heard about a place called 𝗬𝗍𝗃𝗀𝗃 in the States. And I noticed in my mum's kitchen she had a recipe book, and I was looking through it, and it came from the Country Life store connected with 𝗬𝗍𝗃𝗀𝗃. And I found an address in there, so I wrote them a letter and asked, you know, about their courses or what they have available. And so I ended up going and studying there, and that's where we met later on.
So you go across there. I want to know, how did you get across there?
Exactly.
Well, actually, I was, because I'm from Zimbabwe, but at that time my father was killed, and so my family was sort of going between Britain and Zimbabwe.
Mm-hmm.
And because I'd come to Australia, when I returned to the UK. And when I got to the UK, I was baptized, and I heard about these ministries that were in the church, and I just really wanted to be involved. I wanted to give my life to God's work. So I ended up going to visit various ministries in the US.
Okay.
And when I got to 𝗬𝗍𝗃𝗀𝗃, I liked it because I was from a farming background, and they have a big farm right in the middle of the area. And so I actually asked them if I could work on their farm. So I was working on the farm at 𝗬𝗍𝗃𝗀𝗃s for a while, and they had the students there, and that's where I saw this little lady, and was very attracted to her.
And she happened to be from Australia, the country where you had been.
That's it. So I was very interested. She's actually from the area that I like most in Australia, up near Byron Bay, which I thought was the best place, and maybe the best partner from this. So that's how things happened. We ended up going to, we got married in Australia, and then we went to Africa to work for the church for a while. And then we came back to Australia, and it was a very long process. We were praying a lot. We were sort of searching for our ministry, our mission in life.
Is that when you went to Perth?
Yeah, yeah, that's where our daughter was born.
Met you.
And we met you, that's right, in Perth. That's right. So, yeah.
Went to church with John.
Yeah,
Yes.
that's right.
It's interesting, Mark, at that time we'd come back, or I'd come back from the mission field.
Yeah.
And I remember talking to you and saying, you know, there's no greater joy than working in the Lord's work. And if anyone's out there, it's true.
Yeah.
It's absolutely fantastic. It's challenging, it's hard, but it's the most rewarding. You know, helping people is what God, through Jesus, showed us.
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit more. You're a doctor. How did all that happen?
Okay, well, after that, to cut a very long story short, we were moving many places, and you know, I think people at that time probably thought we were very unstable. I think we were, particularly myself. Maybe looked irresponsible because I was so desirous of finding my mission in life that I just didn't feel satisfied. That wasn't right, and we ended up moving many places.
I think everybody goes through that, Mark, when they're searching.
Some people, most people.
Yeah, some people are much more stable than I was as a young person. But anyway, I ended up getting into medical school in Brisbane, Queensland. And after medical school, we went back to 𝗬𝗍𝗃𝗀𝗃𝗀𝗃s and worked at 𝗬𝗍𝗃𝗃𝗀𝗃s for a while. I did a residency in lifestyle medicine, and then I was in contact with the General Conference to get some experience in remote area surgery, because I thought, you know, for my work as a missionary, I need to have exposure to a mission sort of surgical type of background. So when I contacted the General Conference, they put me in touch with 𝗪𝗏 Adventist Hospital. A man called Dr. 𝗪𝗵𝗁𝗪 was the director then. And he took me on. He said it took a long time to arrange this. All this took many years. But in the end, when we went there, I was just submerged from day one in the most phenomenal experience in remote area medical, surgical work. And that prepared us for Vanuatu. Yeah.
So it's a really interesting way that God has led.
Yeah.
He
Because
doesn't do it in a day, does he?
No.
It takes time.
years.
You forgot to
decades.
mention
What's that?
that you spent a couple of years studying theology at Avondale College.
Yeah, I had this, I was maybe thinking too big, I don't know. I had this idea that I wanted to be a missionary, pastor, doctor combination. But that hasn't happened yet. Maybe.
Well, it has happened, but you know,
Differently.
in a different way. But you're doing both. You're winning. You know, you're helping people, and you're leading them to the Lord. That's a missionary doctor service that is the most greatest service I think you could find.
Yeah. Sometimes people accuse me of biting off more than I can chew. So maybe
Your wife is smiling over there.
Maybe you need.
true?
Maybe sometimes you need to think of spitting a bit of it out.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, that's what I tell him sometimes.
Now, so I want to know, how did you get from Malawi, was it?
Maluti.
From Maluti,
Maluti?
which is Lesotho.
Oh, Lesotho.
Maluti
okay.
Adventist Hospital in Lesotho, which is a country within South Africa.
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
So you were there with Dr. '𝗪𝗀𝗀𝗀. How did you get to Vanuatu?
Okay,
And
in actual
working with
fact,
layman's
while
ministries?
we were involved in, while I was getting trained as a doctor, we found ourselves mixing with people, especially going to churches where they were very international. I guess because we're, especially myself, international background. I'm not sure where I come from. Scottish. At the moment, I've got 3 citizenships, so I'm not sure where I belong. But yeah, because we were kind of international, we were mixing with people from various countries and always seemed to be talking to or befriending or being with or doing Bible studies with or praying with people from the Pacific Islands. That's just the way it happened. And so we started thinking, this seems to be God's leading, like He wants us to work with the people in the Pacific. And we thought, okay, when you're doing mission, we try to work from first principles, you know, start with a clean slate. How do we decide where we're going to go? How do we do this? What are the things, what is mission? And hopefully we can talk about that more later. But we basically decided that we want to go to the nearest and the neediest. And if and we're thinking international, we could say nearest and neediest within Australia, but we chose to go to the nearest and the neediest outside Australia. And those seem to be the people of Melanesia because they're pretty close to us. But we were told that New Guinea is pretty dangerous, so we're thinking a young family, probably go to Vanuatu would be a safer place to go, which is true. And so we heard about Vanuatu from some friends, and we thought, okay, well let's launch into Vanuatu. So when we got to the US, we're working at 𝗬𝗪𝗂𝗀𝗀𝗀, we contacted Layman Ministries, which is Jeff Rich. We met him at ASI, and we talked to Jeff. We said, Jeff, do you want to do a project in Vanuatu? Because we're heading in that direction. We would like to do it with you. So we teamed up with Jeff to start a project with Layman Ministries, and they gave us the green light. And so when we left 𝗬𝗪𝗂𝗀𝗀𝗀 to go to Lesotho, we knew that we were there just temporarily to get some experience before we went to Vanuatu. When we got to Australia, we were ready to launch for Vanuatu. We joined Pacific Gulf Ministries. Kind of did this step by step to make sure that we covered all bases and check everything out, make sure we were doing the right thing. And there were a lot of questions we had. One of the questions we had is, are we really making the right choice? We could have, you know, worked with ministry in the States or Australia or something, and probably been sort of maybe more well known or something. But we're thinking we're going to Vanuatu. This sounds like we're putting our light under a bushel type of thing. We were wondering, is this really a good idea? But anyway, we did it, and we ended up going to Vanuatu.
Yeah, you're on an island. It's
pretty remote.
Pretty remote, yeah.
Yeah, one of the most remote places in the Pacific. Yeah.
So what are you thinking all this time? You're just following Mark along, or you're saying, yeah, I want to do this?
One reason I mentioned my upbringing was I think God prepared me for this. And even before we went to Vanuatu, we'd been building a little house on a tiny little block of land out in the middle of the bush somewhere, and we'd got used to living without running water, without electricity, without a phone connection, and so the Lord had been preparing us step by step so that by the time we got to this remote island, where
It
the
was
phones
like that.
didn't work,
Yeah.
no electricity, and sometimes you have to go and get your water from the river or something.
So
no flushing
you
toilets.
You had some practice.
Yes.
God often prepares us in certain ways or different ways for the work He ends up giving us to do. And we're thinking, why am I doing this? Or what connection has this got to do with my life? But then later on you look back and say, that's why I had to know about that.
Yeah.
right.
And even when he was going through medical school, we were really hard up. We didn't have money to spend on having a nice car, for example. So we had these old cars that would always break down. So he got a lot of mechanical experience fixing up our Datsun or our little old cars that we had. And that was a great preparation for him now, knowing what to do when the plane needs some maintenance done on it. So
I never dreamed that when I was fixing, the gearbox or changing the rings on this rubbishy old car, that one day I would be flying an aircraft and
fixing the engine.
helping. I don't do all the maintenance on the plane, but helping the engineers. Yep.
So you, Mark,
Yep.
you are the epitome of the flying doctor.
Well,
You are the real thing.
people
you are the
think
doctor,
of
you
it
fly
that
the
way,
plane.
I think. But we've learned some things from mission that we love to share with people, because we've had to sort of boil it down to the bare essentials. What is mission? What is it that makes a missionary? What are the principles that can be applied in every situation? And we want to talk to viewers about that.
We will do a program.
Because there are people who are in wheelchairs, there are people who are bedbound, there are people who are lonely, who don't have any position in a church, or who don't know how to do much. But if you take the principles of mission, you can apply them anywhere, in any situation, and be just as much of a missionary as we are, if not more so. So we'd like to share that.
I just want to share something with the viewers, and it's very important that you understand. Rosemary and I have been missionaries overseas. As missionaries overseas, that you go through a church organisation, the flights are worked out for you. You arrive, they tell you what to take. They put you in a home, a beautiful home. They provide all the things. You have running water.
Beautiful.
Well, not necessarily, but they are very comfortable, very similar to the lifestyle that you had prior to going out there. But these two are going in a different situation. They don't have anything out there. They don't even know basically what facilities are there, all those sorts of things. So this
sounds like Abraham.
So listen, because this story is quite an incredible story, and it may encourage someone to be able to go and do the same, because God is looking for people to be a blessing to others, because that's what you have been in the time that you have been out there. And
Can I look at a photo that you have?
Okay.
It's a view out of the aeroplane, and it's beautiful with that waterfall and that river. Where is this?
This is 𝗨𝗀 Island, and it's a volcanic island. There's an active volcano in the center of this picture at the top there. It's smoking away. It did erupt quite seriously in 2011.
And is that where
That's
the
a
waterfall is? Is that the actual wall of the crater?
Yeah, that's the crater there with the big lake up there, and it falls down over one of the biggest waterfalls in the South Pacific. It's beautiful. I think it's about 98 meters, and it's
98 meters in height.
It's a massive waterfall. Yeah, yeah.
It's beautiful.
And so
that's where you are.
We're on that island.
You were on that island below that waterfall, is that right?
Initially, our first house was right where that river flowed down.
Yeah.
Just a few meters from our home. So when we arrived on 𝗨𝗀 Island by boat, and we walked up to the new house that we were going to be living in, there was no doors and no windows installed at that stage, so it was an open building.
So this wasn't
beside the river.
This wasn't a little boat ride from the airport to your home, was it?
No.
No, we went to 𝗵𝗿, which is the capital, and we purchased, 𝗨𝗵 Ministries helped us to purchase a fiberglass, 7-meter fiberglass boat with
and we have a picture of that.
2 outboard engines on the back. And that boat, we had no idea. We did not know how seriously dangerous it was to go where we were going, across the big ocean in this thing.
Out in the open ocean in that?
Yeah, yeah.
For how many hours?
Well, for a full day and a night to get to Santo from Vila, and then from there
We had a break.
we had to turn back actually, because we went out, myself and Naomi and our daughter Kay, and a cat. Believe it or not, we took a cat, which
Someone
in
had given us a
Vanuatu
kitten.
you never take a cat on a ship or on a boat, because that's they believe, they're superstitious believers that that could cause trouble. That could cause trouble.
And did it?
It did. I don't think it was a cat. It was just the ocean is rough, and we went out, and
we were
as
just
we were heading,
inexperienced in the.
we got help on the first leg, but the second leg we went out, and the people were just shaking their heads and saying, they were saying, "We'll pray for you." All the people in Santo, they were worried about us. We didn't realize how dangerous it was, and out we went across the open ocean, and the water got rough. And when you're in that kind of in big waves, we thought we're going to go over. We've got to turn back. And as we turned back, a whole pile of dolphins came right around the boat, and it was like dolphins. I don't know if you've ever seen dolphins. They're beautiful things, and it just lifted up our hearts. It was like God was saying, "Don't worry, I'll take you back to where you need to be." And
To us, it seemed like a crowd of angels around us.
Yeah. So as we went back, we ended up having a lot of difficulty. It was very dangerous, but because we were so inexperienced. And anyway, we got to safety on the northeast side of Santo, and we spent the weekend and we prayed over the Sabbath. And then on a Sunday morning, we left again and went out over that big ocean.
Weather.
It was a bit better, very choppy. And we got up to 𝗬𝗪. We didn't realize that there was a reef that we had to go through, and we didn't know where to go through this reef. Looking back, it was crazy. It was madness. You know, it's amazing that we did this. We risked our lives to do this. But the Lord put there was some boys fishing outside the reef, so they showed us how to come in. When you're going in through a reef, you've got to know where to go. You can't just you can't just cross that reef.
Otherwise, you'll end up on that reef and sink.
Fortunately, it wasn't too dangerous, and they took us in, and we ended up where we were staying. Yeah.
So I want to know, how come you chose 𝗬𝗪?
That's what I was going to ask.
How did that happen?
Well,
How come you
basically,
chose
You know,
that
you
spot?
don't know where you're going.
yeah. No, the reason I had
had
actually
been
been there. I went with Pacific God Ministries to scout out. You know, like the 12 spies.
Yes, yes.
I went with Pacific God Ministries specifically to check it out. I was a doctor for Pacific God Ministries at that time. Ended up getting malaria from that trip, but after I recovered, then anyway, went back, and we knew roughly where we were going. What happened was, when I got to 𝗬𝗪, I said to the people, I said, "We need a place where there's lots of water. Do you know the place where there's lots of water?" And they said, "Yes." Thinking of the big river, it's called Big Water.
Big water.
Yeah, and so so we ended up taking this. I ended up going with this guy, walking down the island towards Big Water. I didn't know what it was, and they showed us this what they call a bungalow. It's like a tourist accommodation, sort of Natangora house, which means thatched housing. Very simple building. I think there's a picture of it, and that building became our home. And this is the clinic here that we started doing medical work in. Basically, that clinic, that house there,
It looks like something from the times of back in England with Shakespeare. That's true.
But the gardens are very beautiful.
Yeah, it's very simple
that was our
building.
best
But
garden
that's
that
how
we ever
people
had.
live there, and that's quite a nice little house that was built. But because there was a dispute on the land, the people who owned that house, they couldn't agree on who should live in it, and so nobody lived in it until we got there. And when we got there, we were invited to stay in it.
But it was still unfinished. There was
So
still
Naomi,
no
you had a
doors.
toilet in there, running water.
We had to pin a bed
electricity.
sheet over the entrance to come in because there was no door.
So
Put some temporary mosquito netting around, and
what was amazing was, after being there for 2 years, we were donated the aircraft and had to move to the airport area. But just before we left, a hurricane hit that building, or a whole island, and damaged the building.
that was an
And so
interesting.
nobody ever lived in it
experience.
after us either. So the house was built and lived in
you.
by us, and then nobody ever lived in it after, and the vines have grown over it. Nobody's
It's
ever
collapsed
lived in
now.
it.
I have a question to ask Naomi. You know, you're sitting in that boat going, what's going through your mind?
Are we mad? What are we doing here?
Yes.
And then praying, said, Lord, maybe we've made the wrong decision to come out here in this boat doing this, but please be with us. And then the
Get us
dolphins
safely
appeared.
across.
And
How old was Kay, your daughter?
she was about 14 at that stage.
I mean, there'd be a lot of things going through her mind. This is adventure, Mum and Dad.
She's an adventure lover. Otherwise, yeah, she would have found it hard. But she thought it was all pretty great.
And what did
She
the cat
grew up
think?
in this kind of thinking, you know, so for her it
Wanna
became
get out.
normal.
Yeah.
Seasick cat.
Yeah, the cat became very, very close to us
he was
through
a
that.
special cat. Yeah.
And after that trip, when we went out to the boat, he would actually swim to us
Through the
to
water.
be with us because he loved us so much. And somehow that boat trip made him, he's not so afraid of water.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
My brother used to throw, we had an above ground pool when I was in primary school. And my brother used to get my mother's cats, Mum raised Siamese cats, and he would throw them into the pool to watch them do doggy paddle to the side.
Yeah.
Cats can be very good swimmers.
I just want to look at some of the pictures that you've brought along to show us, because
Okay.
this is not a normal missionary starting place, is it, the way you've started? But you develop things. What is this? Tell us about this.
This is the HF radio that we used. This was our connection
two
with the
photos
outside
together.
world.
On the
Two
left
photos,
side,
yeah.
yeah.
One is our bed. It's, as you can, that's the inside. We had a lot of mosquitoes there.
Is malaria very prevalent?
Yeah, and it's we just had mosquitoes, so many mosquitoes that we almost had to live under the mosquito net sometimes.
That bed was in the living area, and both our daughter's bed on one side of the room, our bed on the other side of the room, both with mosquito nets. But that was the living area in the middle between them, so it's just basically a one-room
Yeah.
cottage.
So yeah, on the left there is the HF radio. That was our connection with the outside world. It was, at that time there was very little communication on the island. There was very few ships going to the island or boats, and there were very few planes flying to the island. We were very, very cut off. When we got there, it felt like we had virtually no communication
You're on the
with
end
the
of the
outside
earth.
world. What's
Felt
that?
like it.
You're on the end of the earth.
Yeah, it was.
You'd fallen off.
There-
It felt like, it felt like we were very far away. But we were determined that, you know, that we'd make something happen.
Did you have communication with your family?
There was a phone about maybe a half an hour walk from the house where we were staying. You'd cross a river on a pole, you know, a tree had been laid across this rushing river, so you'd sort of balance your way. And
So
in
you
rainy
became
weather,
a
it's
good
very
acrobat
slippery.
person.
You walk across that and you go to the, there was a little primary school nearby, and you would stand in the queue and wait and wait and wait. When it finally got your turn to use the phone, it was running off a little battery that had a
The battery
solar
was
panel.
nearly flat.
Yeah, and so you'd get to say, hello, Mum, you know, and you'd
beep,
talk for a
beep,
few
beep.
minutes. And then, of course, everyone's sitting around waiting and listening to your conversation, so there was no privacy at all.
Yeah.
So you'd only phone because you really had to.
Yeah, so once in a while, just to
Now,
make contact and
I
let them know you're still alive and you're still well.
I'm thinking you're the only light-coloured skinned people there, or there are
pretty
others.
much.
There was
I think
one
there
or
was
two Peace Corps volunteers on the island
American
at that
Peace
time.
Corps
yeah.
volunteers got
Okay.
there, but they were in a
But-
different area from
Yeah.
us.
So how were you treated by the locals?
Very warmly. You know, medical missionary work. The moment you start helping people is the moment they start loving you. And we through the years we've become, you know, virtually every family has at least one person who is a patient. Some of them have become very close friends. So you know, it's not just 𝗬𝗪, but the whole province. So we have become very integrated, you might say, extremely integrated.
So you went to one little place on
One
the
little
island.
Island,
remote place,
yeah.
yeah.
But that was where your ministry began.
where
we
But your ministry is now all over the whole place.
Well, we were donated an aircraft, and that is a story in itself, a big story.
Which I'd like to hear the story.
Well, before they do, I just want to go back. We saw the house that you lived in and the conditions.
Yeah.
What about a church? Did you have a church?
Yeah, we used to attend a little church that was just started by a lady up to the north of the island. We used to go by boat, and it was quite an ordeal to get there to church. But that's the little church there, as you see on the screen. very, very small and very inadequate and very hot.
You'd
When
certainly
he
have
stood
to
up,
stay
he would
awake.
hit his head on those.
Oh, it's that low.
Yeah.
It's very low. And there was a minimal amount of church members and very, very limited background in the church and way to run the church.
It wasn't
etc.
even an organised church. It was
No,
just
it was
a little
just a
group
company.
meeting
Yeah.
together.
A little
Yeah.
company. Not even a company, I think just you would say a small congregation. Yeah, small group.
So there we go on to, you know, you
I want to know
mentioned a
about
plane.
the plane, yeah.
Well, basically, from that point, we ended up asking, through 𝗨𝗶𝘀𝗀𝗃, we were given a chance to do Jeff Rich came and interviewed us. And at the end of the interview, I made an appeal for an aircraft, if anybody had one. And somebody in Arizona called Joe, he had a large amount of tax to pay on a piece of property. He had an aircraft that he wanted to donate, and he was able to do a tax-deductible gift through the aircraft to layman
reduces
ministries.
tax.
At first we were kind of skeptical because it was so ideal, just
the very one
ideal.
he'd been researching.
The one that
would
we'd
be
found would be the
best.
most appropriate aircraft. That's the one he had, and he gave that, and it's been such a blessing.
So do you think that's divine, is that just coincidence or is that divine providence? It has to be.
If
divine
anybody
providence.
has any questions, I'd encourage him to look on Google Miracle Mall, and you'll find a video on YouTube that tells the story.
How do you spell that?
Miracle Mall, M-A-U-L-E. This is the name of the aircraft. It's a mall model. And these are bush planes. It has Alaskan bush wheels. The story behind that plane is just amazing. It is a miracle how God provided that plane. It's a big story in itself.
I like the colour, it stands out, doesn't it?
Yeah, it's very prominent. Everybody knows, everybody in the province and many people in the whole country know that plane because it can't escape being noticed.
You know, it's interesting you had that, because when we first started 𝗨𝗃𝗀𝗃, we had a green short wheelbase Land Cruiser, and they called it the Green Frog.
Right.
And everybody knew it as the Green Frog. What's happened to the Green Frog? You know, that's a question we get asked now.
Yeah.
And that little vehicle carried us around to spread the news of 𝗨𝗃𝗃𝗀𝗃 and being able to get it on satellite in Australia. That was an amazing thing. And you're doing the same out there in the islands with this plane.
This plane has given us high profile, not only in the province and not only in the country, but believe it or not, around the world. People have seen this. 3 secular television programs have come and made programs about this and televised it on French television and British television.
I've got a question. You're there in nowhere,
Yeah.
okay? No man's land.
Yeah.
And someone donates you an aeroplane.
Yeah.
Where are you going to put it and how are you going to land it somewhere in the jungle?
Right.
You've got to start making airstrips.
And where did it have to come
so
from, America?
how did that happen?
It came from America. It's pretty amazing. When that plane was sent, it was sent in a 40-foot container, and
With the wings off.
with the wings folded and hung in the sides of the container. When it arrived at the wharf in Port Vila, we had secured import duty exemptions, but I wasn't sure how that was going to go. When I went down to the wharf, I was really afraid of having to pay something, and
a large amount.
a large amount of money
Yeah.
to get it cleared. And I went down into the office, and the guy handed me the paperwork and said 750 Vanuatu, which is about $7.50. And I said, okay, and I paid him his 750 Vanuatu, and I signed whatever had to be signed, and I was waiting, and I thought, well, what about the next step? And he said, you can go now. And I said, isn't there something else I have to do? And he said, no. And I said, you mean I can go and open the container now? And he said, yes. And I can take the container away? Yes. So I walked over to the container, we had the key, unlocked the container, looked inside. There's this plane given by Joe.
And you paid $7.50.
We paid $7.50 for it.
Now, I've got a question.
Yeah.
You know, you're a doctor.
Yep.
How did you get your license? You're going to fly this thing.
When I was at Lesotho,
That's another question.
I decided, you know, to be a missionary, you've got to think ahead, and you've got to try to become as useful as you can. So when I was at Lesotho, there was a flying school right next door at Vicksburg, just over the border in South Africa. So I used to go over the border to get training, and I spent 3 weeks there finishing it all off and got my license. So I had a private license, not a commercial license, but when we got to Vanuatu, it just seemed like a plane would be so useful, because there are airstrips there, and since then, as Rosemary pointed out, we've built airstrips, and there's a lot of stories in those airstrips. But yeah, so we had this plane given. It was the right plane for the right job, and that aircraft is now flying every week into bush airstrips all over the province.
Amazing.
Now, there was an airstrip you built, and I don't know whether it's where you are,
Yeah.
and someone died.
Yes, somebody died. Somebody actually, when we were building the airstrip, a volunteer came, and it was a tragic accident. He was killed.
Something fell on him?
Yeah, a big tree
From
fell on
a
him.
tree? Or, yeah.
Yeah, so actually, it makes us feel very sober about what we're doing. You know, somebody's actually given his life to help us.
But at the same time, you have given life to so many people in your your work, and Naomi too, because, you know, I'm just waiting. I'm just looking at the time, and I'm thinking we're just not even begun the stories, but we'll get there.
Yeah.
But you know what I would like to say. You know, you actually built a hangar, didn't you?
Yeah, we built a hangar.
You built your home. You've also built a clinic, medical centre.
There's the medical centre with
there
the hangar.
There was a group of young people.
And your home is upstairs.
Yeah, we live
the
upstairs.
hangar.
The plane downstairs, and
Well, not everybody has a plane
parked
in their
underneath
basement.
in the garage. Yeah.
It's rather noisy when he jumps in to take off.
It's pretty noisy.
So I guess you were making. I'm just looking at those buildings look quite impressive, and I'm thinking, you know, as a doctor there, you would be making a lot of money. Would that be right?
I get paid food, local food,
Taros,
yams, taros,
cassava.
root vegetables, fruits, bananas. That's what people give me in return for treatments. So all that's come from people, supportive people. We've put our own money into it.
Through Layman's Ministries, they've contributed quite a substantial amount.
Layman Ministries, personal friends of ours, often little old ladies who are humbly helping missionaries.
And widows'
and some of our own personal funds. So the Lord made it happen.
So
you know,
who paid for your hangar and the clinic and things?
Well, the clinic was a group from 𝗬𝗵 Yugoslav Church in Brisbane. They came over, and I'm not sure, there was several people donated. You know, all of these things you can never say one person, because it was God did it through many people. We have to be willing to give our part. Other people give. The ministry supported some, and so everything happened.
Comes together.
Yeah.
God is in charge. And you said, you touched it right on there. You know, we're talking with Dr. Mark Turnbull and Naomi Turnbull. They've given their lives in service to the Lord. Well, you know, we want people to see what you're doing and really support it, because we are living in the last days. You know, there's no question about it. So if you want to give, you can do so at this address.
Or contact them.
If you would like to contact Dr. Mark and Naomi Turnbull and support their work in Vanuatu, you may contact them in the following ways. Their mailing address is PO Box 777, Killarney, Queensland 4373. That's Post Office Box 777, Killarney, Queensland 4373. Contact them via email on forhishope@gmail.com. That's the number 4, hishope, all one word, @gmail.com. Donate to them via their website. The address is www.forhishope.com/give. Contact them today.
So I hope you took down those details. That last link goes to Layman's Ministries.
The donate one.
The donate one. So we would encourage you to consider, because we're going to do another program, but before we do, we've got a few more pictures, and I think the airstrips are quite impressive that you have to land on out there, Mark.
The airstrips that I land on, they are short. They're at the most 350 metres. The shortest one I've ever landed on was about 160 metres, but we try and make sure that they're 350 long and about 50 metres wide between those coconut trees. So it requires bush pilot training. It's not just your average airstrip. No other aircraft go there. It's only myself. So they are scary.
And I'm looking at the plane, there's not a front wheel. Now, why is that? Why don't you have those sorts of planes that everyone sees with a front wheel?
Okay, the front wheel that you're talking about, nose gear,
Yes.
tricycle gear configuration, that is your average plane now. The light aircraft has a tricycle gear configuration. The plane I use has a tail dragger configuration. It is much better for a bush airstrip. It's harder to steer safely on landing, but it's much better for takeoff and much safer on landing because you don't have the nose wheel, small nose wheel. You have a small tail wheel.
So if you drop in the front with the front wheel, you go over like that, don't you?
If you hit a pothole, you would nose over.
Yeah.
So the tail wheel, you notice the big wheels on it. That's the Alaskan bush wheels. They're bush aircraft. It's designed for that kind of landing, and people do this. You know, what I'm doing is similar to what a lot of people do in Alaska, a lot of hunting pilots, a lot of bush pilots that do it for sport or for fun. They land on much rougher places than I do. But yeah,
it's dangerous, isn't it?
It's in a different category to your average normal flying experience.
Tell me, is it the locals who actually clear those
those
runways?
The local
they chop
people.
down the coconut
Mostly,
palms
yeah.
and dig them out and...
Rosemary, we've had volunteers
Or
who've
is there
come.
equipment?
The most sophisticated equipment we've ever used has been chainsaws. That's all. But it's really amazing the story behind 𝗪𝗏𝗪𝗏 Airport because that is a huge story in itself. But that was actually prepared from an area which is so difficult to put an airstrip. I think any engineer would look at it and say, let's give this away, this is too hard. But the local people brought in stones, made an airstrip out of a place where there was a lot of large stones that had to be buried in order to get rid of them. They actually had to dig holes
and sink them down.
Put these stones in the holes to get rid of them because they couldn't get them out of the way any other way. They used big ropes and crowbars, and in some cases at 𝗪𝗏𝗪𝗏 they actually used sticks to dig the ground because there was large crowds of people coming out to do this, and they didn't have enough tools, so they were actually digging the ground with sticks and carrying stuff in little pandanus baskets to get, instead of wheelbarrows, you know. The work that was involved was just phenomenal, and it really pulled the whole community together.
That's something important to take note of.
Yeah.
And some of those, we'll talk about in the next program. I've got a question.
You know, I just want to, just for you for a brief moment in closing, just tell the people, you know, if you're going to be a missionary, you've got to be dependent upon the promises of God. What would you tell them in particular, just for 2 seconds?
Okay. God's promises are all on condition. If you want to claim God's promises, you must meet the conditions. One of the most overlooked of all the conditions is you need to give your life in service to God. So that's it.
We'll talk about it again. I want to thank you for joining us. Come and listen to us again. May God richly bless you.
This is 3ABN Now with John and Rosemary Malkovich.
Hello and welcome to 3ABN Now. Thank you for joining us. I know that there are viewers on VAST that are watching, and we would encourage you towards the end of the program or any time, write us a letter and let us know what you think about our programs. But today we're continuing on with the program that I'm sure you're going to be very interested in. We're talking with Dr. Mark Turnbull and Naomi, his wife. They've come from a little island not far from the main headquarters, Vanuatu, and this is really talking about a flying doctor. And you know, literally, because he actually flies a plane around the around the province of Vanuatu where they are, bringing patients and treating patients. And I think it's a commendable enterprise that you're being involved with. So, Dr. Mark, welcome to the program again.
Thank you, John.
And Naomi, because you play a very important part out there too as his wife, as we'll find out.
I want to say something, that their work is more than just medical. It has expanded, and this is what we're going to look at today. Last program we did with you, we talked about how God fulfills his promises and God brings to pass those things that he has said that he would. And in this program, we're going to look at how he's done it and what God has done, because God has done a lot through the work that you're doing. So I'm looking forward to this so we can find out more about what's happening in Vanuatu.
You know,
on 𝗬𝗏?
Yeah, 𝗬𝗏 Island.
The
𝗬𝗏 Island, I'm learning that.
Right up in the north of Vanuatu.
And I'm looking forward to coming there one day if God allows it.
Please come.
Yeah.
Please come.
And I'd encourage anyone else. It's like, I was thinking about John the Baptist. He was out in the wilderness and people came there. And I know that's happening, and I know that's going to continue to happen as you unfold the story towards us. You're involved with Layman's Ministries.
Yeah.
Jeff Reich is the founder of...
Jeff Rich.
Jeff Rich.
Jeff Rich.
Yeah.
So tell me a little bit about that in a brief nutshell, how it's been involved with your ministry.
We met Jeff at ASI in the US and teed up with him to do this project. It's one of 7 projects that Layman Ministries is doing around the world. One in the Philippines, and there are other projects. They're all very different projects. Each one is very unique, and the one that we're involved with is a medical aviation project.
And I know that Jeff's been there, done a program
on
what's happening there.
Yeah.
So I think it must give him joy in his heart to see when he's helping to finance through donations, projects, to see them flourishing, you know, in the fact of souls being won, people being helped.
We're so privileged to work with Jeff and Layman Ministries. It's a great organisation to work with.
Very good.
And I agree with that. Now tell me, you can't do all this on your own. There's a team of you out there, isn't there?
Yep.
Yeah, there is a team.
We're going to talk a little bit about that team.
Yeah. Well, actually, it's Naomi and myself, and our daughter Kay has been helping us for the last 14 years.
She's on the bottom right?
She's down on the bottom there. We've adopted 2 children. One is Natalia, who's helping us a lot in the medical line.
And who's the young pilot?
The young pilot there is Mariah, who's a little boy that we adopted, and his name, Mariah, means God provides, and his name represents what God has done. Up on the top left there, we have Scotty Stevenson from 𝗬𝗏, who's been with us for 6 years, and his wife Kathy. And they're also adopting 2 children, and they're going to be replaced by some other missionaries who are coming quite soon as well.
So do you have many people come out there and join the team for a short period of time?
We've had so many different people involved at different times. People have come. You know what's so amazing, John and Rosemary? Going to Vanuatu, one of our biggest concerns, I think I said in the last program, we were concerned about the possibility that we were actually
too isolated,
maybe hiding our light under a bushel by going there. But what's been so amazing is how God has brought people from everywhere. Just recently we had a traveling person who came from Switzerland, and she's been with us and been on a flight with us, and we've had people from northern Norway and US, China, where are the other places? Even a man came from Israel. He looked like Jesus, a man who came. I don't know, sometimes we wonder if God sends angels, because we've had so many people from so many different places who've come, and we've been blessed by their visits. They've come for many different reasons, some journalists, like Italian journalists, French journalists, people from so many different languages.
To see the work you're doing?
Well, for different reasons.
Yeah, they come for various reasons, but they end up hearing about us and then wanting to come and meet us.
So you're a witness, really, aren't you?
Well, God is using our situation as a platform to share with people, and they come into our home and often eat with us. So, yeah, it's really amazing, because we genuinely feared that we were going too remote, but God has actually made this very remote location somehow. There's been 3 secular television programs made about it, And here we are on 3ABN. We're so thankful. Thank you
say,
for having us.
how do people know about us? How do they know that there's this place?
Yeah.
And that's exciting. It really is. And at the end of the program, or towards the end, we'll talk about someone else that's visited you.
Okay.
You know, Mark, I want the viewers to know, especially those who have a burden for helping and seeing the work of God go forward. You know, most importantly, they need your prayers, number one, because it's through the power of God that all is accomplished. And I'd encourage you, towards the end of the program, there's a means of contacting them and financially supporting, because there's some projects that they are looking at that will help for the well-being of the many parts of that province in the island. And so I would encourage you to get your pen and paper ready, because this ministry is evidenced by the fruit it bears. And the Bible says, you shall know them by their fruit. Fruit is a revelation of what is happening in your area that you're working with. And I'd encourage you to seriously consider it. If you can't provide funds, tell other people who may be able to.
Or who may be able to go and help in some way.
That's right. So there's ample opportunities. And if you're one person saying, well, I'd like to do something like that, then there is that possibility too, by learning from these people. And we hope to do another program where we will do just that, the do's and don'ts and how to commence it. And most importantly, as Dr. Mark has said, the promises of God are paramount, and making yourself available in every aspect for God to use is what missionaries are about. And so I'm excited about that, Dr. Mark. So I want to, you want to say something,
Yeah,
Rosemary?
I want to, on the last program we did with you, we were talking about the bush airstrips that have had to be created, and you were discussing one that had to be built, they had to dig holes to put the stones in. Because I mean, that's amazing. You're on a volcanic island. You've got a volcano there. A live one?
Oh yeah, it's very active.
And you have, you actually have earthquakes or tremors.
Yeah, we have earth plate tremors, and we have local volcano tremors as well.
So it keeps you alert, it keeps you aware that there's something around.
Did you know that Jesus said that at the end of time, the islands are going to flee away?
That's true.
I've read that.
And whole islands will disappear.
Exactly. And you're on a little island.
I think our island could well disappear when that happens.
But the angels will have to pick you up and transport you.
In the meantime, we've got work to do.
You've got to keep going. People need to know about Jesus.
We did have a volcanic eruption. We thought we were going to get shifted off the island.
There's some people are in those islands there, aren't there?
𝗠𝗶𝘀𝗀𝗀 Island, the whole island was evacuated just recently.
So it's a very serious thing.
But you've got these airstrips on these volcanic islands there.
Multiple airstrips.
How many airstrips have you got that you land at?
5 bush airstrips and 4 government airstrips, public airstrips.
Let's look. Here's the aeroplane.
Yeah.
It's a cute little plane.
Yeah.
Only little. And there in the top left is one of the airstrips you land on.
Yeah.
Is that a bush one? Or
these
is it
are
a government
all
one?
of these ones here are bush airstrips. That one on the top left is Torres.
One of them's right by the water.
Yeah.
If you go too far, you're going to end up in the water.
Well, these airstrips, most of them are very close to the ocean. One of them is actually right near the beach.
That one there looks like someone was starting a veggie patch, and you're going to land on it. It's not very big.
That is Mota airstrip. That is, it's a 350-meter airstrip, but often the ends get neglected, and so I often end up landing on 250 meters and taking off on that. So it's risky, and you need proper training to do it, because it's bush pilot training required.
Have you had any close incidents where?
I have had some close some moments when I thought I was going to have a crash, but the Lord's protected us. One time I had to land on a field because there was a lot of rainfall over the main airport in Santo, and I landed on a farm called Jubilee Farm. And yeah, we didn't scratch.
There weren't any cows in the way at that moment when he had to land.
Yeah.
So have you gone close to running out of fuel?
Well, that was the closest, but I knew that I had to land somewhere soon, and so, but the Lord protected in that particular occasion. But you have to always have extra fuel when the weather is bad. We watch the weather pretty closely. Yeah.
Does it change very quickly?
Rapidly, and when you get storms, yeah, it's.
And you have
tropical storms.
cyclones?
We have cyclones. We have earthquakes. We have volcanoes. All the big.
You don't have
geophysical
tornadoes,
disasters.
so you're lucky.
Yeah, at least
Yeah.
we don't have those.
Yeah.
So, you know, we're talking about planes. There must be a specific use for the plane in that part of the world.
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about, you know, I know that you go to those places. Why would you go to a little strip like that and land on it? For what purpose?
Oh, well, it's part of the medical aviation work that we're doing. So I fly into these airstrips, see patients, and then they often come with me, and then I take them back. So it's...
Do you have contact with those people on those different
I have
places?
contact,
So
yeah. When we first went there, we used HF radio. Now we got more cell coverage, so that's better. And
so it's used for emergencies, pick up patients and bring them...
a lot of the big cases in the province, not everyone, but a lot of the big cases in the province, we handle them, and I go and get them, evacuate the patient, bring them to where we are, look after them. If they're very unstable, we take them to Santo, hospital in Santo.
How far away is that?
That's an hour's flight.
Yes.
If we can handle them, we deal with them in 𝗬𝗪, and we deal with a lot of cases.
So I'm just looking, you're the only doctor, when you say we, you're the doctor that does all these cases?
Yeah.
So you're doing pretty serious surgery at times?
Sometimes we have to do surgery, yeah. Yeah, we do some smaller cases. We've done cesarean sections.
Okay.
I've seen a photo of you with your hands in someone's body.
Well, yeah, in a remote location like that, you have to be willing to be more versatile than for example, in a city. Yeah.
And your nurse was your adopted daughter, Natalia.
Yeah, we have a lot of help from the local nurses, and also we train up young people to help us.
That sounds really exciting.
And at 16, she must have some exciting adventures.
Oh, all our staff, they all have a lot of exposure to a lot of stuff. Yeah, we have a lot of cases coming through, so they get experience very quickly.
So I'm just curious, I've met Natalia.
Yeah.
She's a lovely young lady, your daughter, and you're training her to be a pilot, is that right?
Well, our long-term plan is for her to be, she actually initially contacted us or came to stay with us because she wanted to have a little bit of exposure to the aircraft. And yeah, the plan is to train her, and she'll go through formal training, but at the moment I'm giving her some exposure, and that's helping her to be ready for getting a license much quicker than you would if you didn't have that exposure.
No, that's excellent.
What a blessing.
That's exciting. And I see that the youngest one's at the plane, at the controls of the plane too, so there may be another one there.
He's keen to be into that.
He loves holding onto those controls.
As a co-pilot.
Naomi,
as co-pilot.
How do you feel about him flying on these very dangerous airstrips? How do you find sort of peace about it?
When it's good weather, I'm not too worried, but sometimes when he's flying, I have to send up a lot of prayers.
Okay.
And we have a tower at the back of our house that someone will climb up. We call it our weather tower. Because once he goes out to these remote islands, then he has no way of knowing whether it's safe for him to fly back, or if if it's raining or something, dangerous conditions. So yeah, it's always a little bit worrying at times.
Well, thankfully it's not like Papua New Guinea when you've got to worry about the fact that there's cloud, you're going to run into a mountain.
Yes.
Yeah, Papua New Guinea is a lot more dangerous than where we are. Yeah.
When we've talked to Colin Winch and the late Len Barnard, I mean, that was constant danger.
Yeah.
You could be driving in the clouds and then all of a sudden crash into a mountain.
Yeah.
Flying in the clouds, not driving.
Well, yeah, flying. Flying.
You know,
They're driving the plane.
The plane goes out and picks up patients. I'll look at some of those pictures.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We're serving an area which covers a large amount of islands, and we have 10 language groups in those islands. So in the morning, when we greet our patients, we'll say 𝗨𝗨𝗧𝗏, 𝗨𝗨𝗏𝘀𝗀, 𝗨𝗵𝗏𝗁𝗏, all these different words, all the different ways of saying good morning in these different languages.
So these are different languages that you have to greet them all in?
Yeah, we're greeting them in up to 10 different languages on one day, yeah.
Wow.
So, yeah.
So God has given you the gift of tongues?
No, we haven't learned all these languages. We speak fluently in 𝗵𝗀𝗻𝗁, which is the pidgin of the country. But we also just know a few words in the local languages. There's so many. It's the most language-dense population in the world.
Is that right?
People of Vanuatu, yeah.
Can you say something in 𝗵𝗀𝗻𝗁?
𝗵𝗀𝗻𝗁.
Can you say something in the camera to the people who would know that language?
Okay. Yes. Thank you. You stop watching 𝗘𝗺𝗶𝗹 today. 𝗬𝗵𝗁𝗀𝗀𝗀 𝗧𝗵𝗆 program 3ABN, and please pray for 𝗬𝗵𝗁 as 𝗬𝗵𝗁 continue and walk 𝗬𝗵𝗁 ṭōba province. So that I was just saying.
I got a good guide idea.
I got a little bit of that.
Yeah, it's very similar to English. So,
Yeah.
yeah. And if you pronounce it clearly, it's very easy for people to catch it.
Because there's different forms of pidgin.
Yeah. So, yeah.
So you're doing that, you've got 10 languages?
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Yeah, we
That's
have a
amazing.
lot of deliveries, and we have a lot of fractures and things like that.
Yeah.
I think we have a picture of some of the babies that were, one day we had 4 babies born recently, and 2 of them were twins.
These are the mothers?
Yeah, these are the mothers.
And
It's just a recent busy day in the life of our clinic.
The lady with the baby in the pink, that is a big baby. Look at it compared to the twins.
Yeah, yeah, that's right. Yeah, some
Either
of them
they
are
are
a lot bigger.
very small twins, which they're not that small, but that is a big baby.
Do you know what I'm noticing? The colour of the clothing and that. It's really
Very
wonderful.
bright.
And
Very colourful.
And the clinic looks really clean. You know, we've been to different places. I've been involved in hospitals around the world, and some of them are sort of not really nice because of the conditions. But yours looks very clean and hygienic.
Yeah.
That's really something special, I think.
What is the hardest medical thing that you've had to face?
That's a very difficult question. We've had so many serious cases, but I can think of one particular case of a pregnant young girl who had, she had a ruptured appendicitis, which was a very, very difficult case. While she was pregnant. She ended up losing the baby, but she was already ruptured and very advanced. And yeah, we had to basically just drain the abscess rather than do anything. We just drained the abscess, and at one moment I thought we were going to lose her. We pray with our patients a lot. Every patient, we pray with them.
That's
all
very
the time.
important. Yeah.
To us, this is our opportunity to get close to them and to pray with them, to pray for them. And a lot of people, we've become friends for life, very close for life as a result of going through those experiences. Yeah.
Because you're like a family as well, aren't you, there? You know, you're working as a family, and that's part of a Christian ethics, isn't it? You know, you treat one another as your brother and sister.
Well, we've been adopted into nearly all of the islands. We've been adopted, culturally adopted, and we've adopted 2 children. And of course, because we're involved in the school, that's really opened up another connection between us and the people. The school has become a big part of our lives as well.
Well, let's look at that. But first of all, we're going to look at the original church building.
Which was the school. Yeah.
Which
That-
used as the school?
It was initially used as the church and then used as the school. Naomi can tell us about that.
Yeah, I like the idea that here's the doctor, here's his wife, he's looking after the patients, you're looking after the school.
That's right.
Yeah, which I didn't go to Vanuatu planning to do this. I thought I'd be the stay-at-home mum and, just make sure things are running smoothly at home. But then they were asking us from the mission education director came up to see what was happening up in Gower and running some meetings and whatever. And he said, you know what, we need some Adventist schools up here in this province. There's nothing. And he said, what about starting a school? I said, all right, we'll think about it, we'll pray about it. And it sort of just went from there. So we had that building that you just saw there was our very first classroom, which was fine in sunny weather. But when it rained, those kids had to move their stools into the middle.
Oh, yes.
And they had no desks. That's all they had, those stools to sit on. So they would
So
actually...
how many were there when you first started?
I think it was about 10 or 15 or something. I've forgotten now. That was in...
And you had full training as a teacher?
No, I didn't. I've not been trained as a teacher. But
practice qualifies you, doesn't it?
You had a textbook?
we had a few books because I'd homeschooled our daughter Kay, and I had come with some books with me and asked friends for some, and every time when I'd go back home I'd pick up bits and pieces. So we started off with just a handful of books that didn't really match, and they were different year levels, and a few colouring pencils and a few activities and things. We didn't have a photocopier, we didn't have anything really to start with. I think a bottle of glue.
You had the will, didn't you?
Craft things, but well, yeah, as it says, if you've got a willing heart, the Lord can do wonderful things. So we started off with just our daughter Kay and another young girl. They actually went around in the community and said who would be interested in sending their children to a church school. And it was amazing who turned up on the first day of school. And then the next day a few more came, and the next day a few more came. And then by the end of that year we had about 15 or 20 kids for the end of that year.
Mm-hmm.
And then the following year we came back to Australia, and we were able to speak at the South Queensland Conference camp meeting and do some awareness of what was happening there. And then people came to talk to us afterwards and said, oh, we'd be happy to come and help with a fly and build. And so in the beginning of 2009, we built our very first classroom with a team from Australia that came for 3 weeks. They lived in tents for those 3 weeks at the hottest time of the year, which was really hard on most of them. And we built that classroom ready to start school the following month. Yeah, the next month we started
Very
school.
good.
And then it jumped. So from 20 students last year, this year we had 40 enrolled students. And then lots of people coming and putting their names on the waiting list. We went to 60 and then to 80. And now we currently have around 95 students.
That's a lot of students.
Yes.
I have a question. I have a
Good
question.
school.
You talked about the different languages there. So what language do you use to teach? You know, when you started that class out, there must have been kids in there that didn't know.
Yeah.
How did that work?
Well, we have to speak English to them at school.
Okay.
But because in their home they're learning 2 or 3 local languages.
So English is the language that's they're
the
trying
education,
to...
yeah. But at home they have at least 1, sometimes 2, and sometimes 3 different languages that they speak in the home. Then we have 𝗶𝗀𝘀𝗀𝗀𝗀, which is the pidgin English that we have to learn it, and they learn it so that they can communicate with their teachers that might come from a different province, or relatives live in different places. So everyone speaks 𝗶𝗀𝘀𝗀𝗀𝗀. And then now they come to school. Now we're teaching them English, and a lot of schools teach French as well. So the 3
In
national,
Vanuatu.
there's 3 national languages in Vanuatu: 𝗶𝗀𝘀𝗀𝗀𝗀, English, and French.
Not only that, this is a special school. We teach special needs children. And because of that, that's how we ended up getting through the registration process. And so we're actually teaching sign language as well,
that's
which is
another
another language.
Right.
Deaf
Yes.
students.
So we have 5 deaf students currently.
So who is these? Who are
Now these are
people?
our wonderful team of teachers. These are very dedicated teachers. They could be earning a lot more money if they're working in a government school somewhere, but they have a heart for...
They've chosen to be there.
God
They're
chose them
missionaries.
and brought them, yeah. They're really faithful teachers and work under hardships, but the Lord is blessed, and we have a really good team, really good team spirit. When we have our teachers' meetings, we have great discussions, and they're really, really willing people to work with. So, for me in my position, not being a fully qualified teacher and having to coordinate the school and supervise what the teachers are doing, I'm right out of my depth, really. But because they're such Christian people, they accept me, and the ideas that I suggest, they're usually very willing to take on board the new ideas, and we do a lot of praying together. We ask God for wisdom and direction, because they're not highly qualified teachers either, like myself.
Well,
No,
God
so-
equips and qualifies
But
those
the
who are
amazing
willing.
thing that has happened is that when the school finally grew, so each year we grew a year, so we started off with like a grade 1 level, then we went to grade 2 and grade 3 and 4, and when we finally got up to the year 8 level, we have a national exam in Vanuatu that all the students around Vanuatu sit an exam before they get selected then to go out to various higher schools.
Oh, okay.
And so for the first year, we were really nervous about this, preparing students to sit an exam. And, but everyone passed, and I had tears of joy running down my cheek. I couldn't believe it. It was a miracle. And then the next year, the same thing happened, and the next year, the same thing happened. So for 6 consecutive years, we haven't had one failure out of all our students.
That's a terrific record.
Considering that some of these students are special needs kids, slow learners, finding it very hard to understand English because all the exams are in English, and to write answers in English, they find it really hard.
Must be very rewarding for
So that's
both
been
of
a
you to
really
see
big
that.
boost to know that this is God doing this, it's not me.
So, you know, it's fascinating that you went from being the teacher. How many years were you the lone teacher?
I was never completely alone because we had a couple of other young girls helping us just for the first 2 years, and then
But they weren't really teachers either?
No.
Yes, so...
And
we
then
didn't
had,
have much teaching talent, but we used what we had, which is a principle that we want to share with people. That is, you've got to use what you've got.
What you've got.
Use what's in your
If there's so many people there that you've said, we saw the picture of the students, 90 or whatever plus, what's the population of the island? Do they know how many people are on your island there?
There's about 3,000 on our island, and then about 10,000, or actually it's growing. The population, a lot of babies being born. Population's probably around 12,000 now. But
For the
3,000
whole province.
on our island. So it's not a big population. We're not working with a big group of people. However, they're isolated, and there's no one else
And they're
there.
in need.
And they need.
You know, education is an extremely important aspect of any development of any place. And you actually, that work is very, very important for the future of the people of the island, because, you know, things can be taught and things can be learnt to change customs and traditions that may not be so good. And, you know, I think it's incredible that
John, it has to be what we call generational evangelism. You can't expect everybody to adopt things that are so different.
Exactly,
You know, coming
just in
from
one
a different,
generation.
very different background. The only way that you can to do it in many respects is just to teach and start with one child at a time.
I have a question. You say that, you know, you have the children sit the Year 8 government exam. What happens to them after that?
That's the sad part. Then we say goodbye, and they fly away to another island somewhere and have to go to, up to year 12 or, you know.
So how old are they when
It's
this
been so hard
happens?
for us.
Usually they're around 15 or 16, or some of them have been a little bit older because they were later
They start
starting.
late.
So they go to a dormitory type school?
Yeah, they'll go to a
Yeah.
boarding school on another island usually.
Often they,
And it's
Or
very...
also
It's
just
not
go
the
back
best
to
for
the
them.
village.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and some don't get any further education. So this is something now that's the next step we're addressing this year. We're trying to
we're
work
trying to push
out
into
ways
secondary.
to push it up so that we can retain them with us a lot longer. Because not only are they making good decisions in their life because of all the things they're learning in the school, but they're also becoming much more spiritually tuned in at that time. And our Bible teachers go through Bible studies with them, and they're making decisions for baptism, making lifelong decisions at this point. So they actually boost up the church as well, our local church. They're very involved in the church. So when they have to go away to another province somewhere to go to high school,
They're out of the environment that they
yes,
used to.
and sometimes they lose their way, and the parents are not really happy with things that happen to them when they're away from home. And
The teachers
it's
are
a challenge.
the core of the church. They are very strong people, and they're the core of our church family. And a lot of these young people are making decisions for baptism. In fact, I think we have a picture showing 2 that were baptized.
Yes.
And Naomi will tell us about those 2.
These 2 lovely young ladies were our students for a number of years, and as they've been in the school learning a lot of good things, especially in our Bible classes, they get very interested and start asking questions, and sometimes the Bible teacher will say, well, is anyone interested in having further studies? Would you like to, you know, be baptized one day? And these girls said yes, would like to be. So we've been able to follow up on that, and they were baptized just a couple of years ago. So the one on our left here, that's Natalia, who we ended up adopting. And the one on the right is 𝗨𝗪𝗀, who's lived in our home now for about 5 years, first as a student, And then she got some teaching practice, and now she's working with us in the clinic. And she's got a pretty incredible story too, which I think Mark's going to touch on.
Both of those, there's a big story behind each one. I'll just touch on 𝗨𝗧. 𝗨𝗧, when I was leaving for Australia one day, I took a patient back to 𝗧𝗏 Island, a remote bush airstrip, dropped off the patient. The chief said, "Can you come and check this little girl? She's very sick." I went into the little hut, and there she was, unconscious, high fever, and I knew this was a cerebral infection. She needed help immediately. I took her back to 𝗬𝗏. I went on my way to connect with my Australian flight to Australia. Left her, this little girl, in the care of my daughter, Kay. The next day she put up IV. We're giving intravenous antibiotics and antimalarials. We didn't know what it was. And the next day Kay was worried that we were going to lose her. So she tried to arrange a flight. The flight was very difficult. There was a lot of people who were really wanting to get flights on that day. And so the local twin otter that comes up that direction we were unable to get a seat for her. She was unconscious, but she was there with her grandmother. And so, but the Lord sent a massive storm that day, and it disturbed the whole flight plan. And so the flight ended up coming to 𝗬𝗏. There was plenty of space on the plane. They propped up this girl in the chair, unconscious, with an IV, someone holding the IV.
I think a nurse happened to be flying the same day who could help with the IV during that 1 hour flight.
And she ended up getting taken to Santo. She recovered. I have so many patients that I take to Santo, so I didn't remember her. But in about 3 or 4 months, one of the chiefs said, "Can you pick up this girl in Santo?" When I picked her up, I just thought it was one of these patients that I'd taken. I didn't know which one. But when she came to 𝗬𝗏, she met us for the first time, even though we were the ones that took her there.
She'd been unconscious.
She was unconscious. She never met us, and she didn't know us. But she now met us. We met her. She'd missed so much schooling, so we said, "Why don't you come to school with us?" So she ended up becoming one of our students, and then she got teaching experience, and now she's working in medical, and she's a star, this girl. And later on, when the General Conference president came, she was interviewed, her experience and how she had been unconscious, and then eventually she was baptized. It was just a wonderful story. Natalia's also got a long story, and at the end of that one is we ended up adopting her. So yeah, it's amazing.
So working with the children in the school, you get very close to them, and you get opportunities to get to know their background and see where they're needing help in whatever areas, and that has opened up a lot of doors.
Because some of the children would be from difficult backgrounds as much as we are, especially in a place that's so isolated and they don't have very much. I can imagine there'd probably be a lot of things going on that would make it a difficult life.
Yes.
A lot of those children have gone through very, very difficult experiences when they were young, and some of them don't have anywhere to turn for help. And one of those was Natalia, and so we invited her into our family, and so she's now our
But the
daughter.
children can come to the school and get some different life.
Yeah.
You know,
the school
a different approach to life. They can not just get an education in the ABCs, but they can also get an education in
lifestyle.
a better lifestyle, and joy, happiness.
We also have yearly camps that the older ones come to, where they stay with us for 3 or 4 days over the Independence weekend. So we take them out camping somewhere, like on a beautiful beach, and we have morning and evening worships with them, and the whole program, games and sitting around the campfire and talking and whatever. And at the end of those 3 or 4 days, they're crying. They don't want to go home.
Yes.
They just love it so much.
I'm sitting here thinking, you
Can I
started.
come? Can I come on a camp?
Yes.
Yeah.
I'm sitting here thinking you've started a clinic, you've got an aeroplane, you've got to put fuel in that aeroplane, you've got teachers, you've got
school,
and it all sounds really, really good.
Yeah.
But how do you survive? How does it all work financially?
It's that's something I'd like to know too, because I'm not sure how it happens. But
The Lord provides.
people support us through Layman Ministries, and when we come to Australia, we've had people donate to us, particularly when we're buying stuff here. We need help with that. And then there's people who've come over and they've things into their project and help with, for example, the team that came and built the medical center. They came and financed the whole thing, and so it's just a miracle. It's an ongoing miracle. It's like in our patient house, we have a system whereby the patients come from other islands and local people bring food, and it's all done just by faith, and people come in without,
And nobody goes
there's
hungry.
no planning, there's no system
Yeah,
to
that's
make
what
it
I'm
work.
thinking.
We don't buy food for
But
the patients.
what
We
about
don't
the
buy
kids
much
at
food
school?
for ourselves
90
either.
No, because you get paid in food.
We pay the patients actually tithe the food that they're given, and God continues to provide. You know, Malachi 4, it says, give a tithe. And so when it comes to the actual food that is given to the clinic, we pay tithe on that. We actually we help the patients to pay tithe, and they end up getting and it's an ongoing miracle. The whole thing.
Yeah.
You know, our son that we adopted, his name is Mariah, and it means God. God has provided. And it's so true, God has provided.
So you mean you got all the teachers and you got the students, they all got to eat, and they've all,
Yeah, it's a lot of...
it's a big
thing.
responsibility.
Yeah, it is.
It's not like having to go to the supermarket and pay exorbitant prices at the supermarket.
You know,
can
one
grow
thing I
food.
just want to say, and that is that when being involved in medical work, one of my greatest fears as a medical person is that we will put too much emphasis on the physical and neglect the spiritual. We're not there just to look after the sick. You know, Jesus healed the sick, but that was not the primary focus. He came with the gospel.
Yeah.
And our desire is to make this work for the church. And if it doesn't work for the church, then what are we doing? You know, we're not just there to help people physically and to neglect the spiritual life. So what's become the glue, like this is actually a threefold ministry. It's not only the school, not only the medical work, but the church as well. We really try to be involved in the church.
So it's a complete holistic approach, isn't it?
Yeah, because if we don't, we're basically detracting from God's work. If we do only medical, we do only our own thing in the school or whatever. I feel that when you're doing this kind of thing, you have to be responsible in making sure that your ministry connects with the church. And that's what I would encourage any viewer to do. If you want to be involved in a ministry, just try to connect your ministry with the church, because that is the ultimate focus. The church is the object of God's supreme regard, and He loves His church. And He wants us to connect our ministry with the church so we can be effective not only in doing good. You know, it's good to be doing good. It's wonderful to do good. You know, I can say I have helped the sick, but that's not enough in God's plan. God wants us to reach people's hearts and to lead people to Him, because that's what it's all about.
He doesn't want them just to have a good life here because we help them with their health, we teach them good lifestyle practices, etc., or we give them a good education so they can go on and do well in life.
Yeah.
But He wants us to teach them about eternal life.
Yeah, that's it.
So that they can have more than this life.
So we have been, I think we have a picture of our church that when we got there, we helped to build this church.
It's a block church,
Which
is it?
Yeah.
Did you
and
make the blocks?
Yeah, we cooked the
local
blocks
people
well,
helped us.
and you know, we worked together
big
as a
team.
team. I carried sand on my back. You have to get sand in there from a long way. It's a long distance to get the sand there to make the cement blocks, and then we put that. We helped to put that church up. The local people built that church.
Who provided the roof?
That was, I believe, who did provide the roof? Do you know? I've forgotten. There were so many people involved. You know. I got a feeling it was actually Naomi's stepfather. Yeah, I think it was. It was Naomi's stepfather.
So that's what some things that can be done if you're doing a project.
Yeah,
Someone
you
can
can
say,
help
"Look,
be
I'll
part."
provide the roof." Or
Yeah,
that's
it.
That's the way to do it.
All of these mission projects, the people who help, it's always a surprise. You find out that poor little old lady is
If
the
we
one
can
that gave.
just go back to that
this.
slide that we're just looking at, there was a couple of little old ladies there in the centre picture.
Oh, yeah.
Oh yes,
These two
yes.
were the ones that God used to start the church and the school. The lady with the black hair, Anna, she gave the land for the church. She was the first Seventh-day Adventist to come to 𝗬𝗪.
Yeah.
And amidst a lot of opposition, she planted that church. And she's now died, but her grave is right there near the church. And the other lady was Jenny. She was the second Seventh-day Adventist to come to the island. her property was given for the school. So now the school is built on her property.
So is that far from your, your
It's
home?
about a mile.
About a mile.
When when you count the number of people that have been involved, it's in the hundreds, and all of them are critical.
Yes, that's
and
right.
how it's all happened is like a meshwork of human activities that have happened over the years. Every single one has played an indispensable part. You can't say it's not God. It's a God thing.
Yes.
Yeah, yeah.
God knows the requirements well before you even think of them.
That's it.
And if it's His work, and I encourage anyone to realise that what you want is the blessing of God in your projects. If you've got the blessing of God, He's the one that's raised it up, and He will continue to provide. Yeah.
John,
As long as the focus stays on Him.
Yeah, that's it. Before we hope we're not going to miss the opportunity, I want to share that what's happened in the church is we've implemented something that the General Conference is calling total member involvement. Now, normally total member involvement is covering, big nation programs, national programs, or even bigger. But we've implemented it in the local church, and I can tell you, this is something that every church family should try. Try to get every single member involved. We have
in the church and in the home, in the family, your children and everyone.
In every part, every aspect, and we choose one Sabbath every quarter, which we call our High Sabbath, and we have a baptism on that day, and we get every single person on the church roll must do something on that day.
Oh, that's interesting.
It's really wonderful what's happening to the church, because it creates a high point for the quarter. So every quarter we have people making decisions for baptism. We just had one about 3 weeks ago. Someone was baptized. A whole pile of people stood for baptism and are going to be preparing for the next one. So it's wonderful what's happening, and I really believe that this could be effective in every church. We've launched into this without anybody sharing it with us. It was something that God gave to us. It's a General Conference initiative, but I haven't heard of people
implementing
on the local level. I don't know if any church has really taken that seriously, but we have, and it's having a transformational effect.
Naomi, do you have any examples of what happens? How are different members of the family involved?
In our family, you mean?
In the church, in this program.
Yeah. For example, on the Friday afternoon, I work with the deaconesses, and we get the young girls at school involved too, if they want to come to decorate the church ready for the following day's program. So that's really
knowing your past and your ability to use flowers, it must be beautiful. Is that right?
Fantastic. You should see the arrangements. It's absolutely beautiful.
And all the girls come, and the ladies and the teachers and everyone, we put our heads together. We have a great time together. It's good fellowship while we're decorating the church. And the guys are outside, and they're raking up the leaves, and they're setting up the baptismal font, and everyone is working together. It's like a hub of activity.
Little beehive of activity, hey?
Really interesting. And then there's another group of people cooking a lap together, putting the hot stones ready to bake the
you're making my mouth water.
So it's, and it gets everyone. And then the following day there's greeters. We give the little kids, with their name tags on, whatever, to greet the people as they come in. And there's singing groups, and it gets everybody involved. And
do they sing well? I know a lot of island people sing well.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Must be beautiful.
We have a theme song for each quarter, and the latest one, I'm just so much looking forward to this new quarter because of this theme song. I'm hungry to see what's going to happen, because we've got a one that we know the 4 parts, and we're going to try to get the whole church to become the choir. The whole church will be the choir. So I'm looking forward to the end of this coming quarter. Yeah.
Excellent. Now, because of that, so you're having a baptism, at least one baptism every quarter?
Usually. Yeah. Not every quarter, but we have aim for a baptism every quarter. Yeah.
For one church, how many church members have you got now?
We have close to 100. Yeah. Church members.
But most of them are young people.
We're the only we're the second organised church in the province. And so we have a lot of company churches under us that we're also trying to build up. We've got a church plant also not far from us, and then there's other church plants on different islands. So there's a lot happening, and it's starting to grow. This is in an area where the Adventist church has been very slow for decades. Just like got stuck, just wasn't moving. And just recently we've seen things really starting to flourish and spreading out. It's wonderful to see.
So who's the pastor?
We have our pastor is actually based on a different island. He comes and helps us with baptisms, but his name is Pastor Ben Allen.
He's looking after all the other islands as well, so he's got
so
a large area.
So you virtually have to look after yourself. Do you have elders that look after?
Yeah, this year I'm the head elder, and we have local ministers who are planting churches, and but the elders are taking a heavy role. And that's another thing I think is important is. You know, the New Testament model, the elders were very active, and that's our elders team is quite strong, and that's also helped a lot with the church. Yeah, we're so thankful that we've taken on board this initiative that came from the GC, and Pastor Ted Wilson. We were kind of influenced because he did visit us, and he came to our project, and. He came and saw the some of our serious cases. We got a lot of our patients that day to come and meet him and see. These are some of the serious cases he met. He came to the school, and he also flew into a bush airstrip with myself and some other people from the General Conference. And he also prayed for the Wellness Centre. He's aware of the fact that we're wanting to start a wellness centre. It's going to be a denominational entity, and he prayed for that, so we've decided to call it the Wilson Adventist Wellness Centre. Okay. So we'd like you to pray for this. This is something that we're just starting to launch into now.
You can see the red line on the photo is the land that you've dedicated.
And the airstrip's at the back, is that right?
Our hangar is up there on the airstrip.
Yes.
And we're asking God to bless this because we have a lot of patients in Vanuatu and overseas who want to come, already wanting to come for wellness treatment. And we've got organic volcanic food.
Exactly what I was going to say, organic volcanic.
It's got to be better than anywhere else in the world, doesn't it?
Well,
the flavours are great. Richest. The food tastes wonderful.
Yeah. It's one of the richest soils in the world, it's got to be.
So you've got already all the money to do this. I know you're looking...
No.
No?
So yes, you have.
Yes, you have.
Well, when
God
you
has
with
it.
The Lord,
it's just, as Danny Shelton says, it's still in other people's pockets.
God's promises, you know, coming back to God's promises. God says, 2 Corinthians 9 verse 8, God is able to make all grace abound towards you, so that you always, having all sufficiency in all things, may abound to every good work. God means it. If we pay a faithful tithe, even as a ministry, we try to pay tithe. The Lord provides. Mariah means the Lord provides. God has provided. He's taken us through many years of difficulty, and we've never run out of juice. The Lord's always providing, and He's promised to provide. So we've actually got a little bit of a boldness about us now when we're doing a project like this. We're not worried at all about the finances, because if you take it to its natural conclusion, if He has provided, you know, as Ellen White said, we have nothing to fear for the future, except as we forget what the Lord has done for us in our past and is leading in our past history. There's nothing to worry about. The only thing we have to worry about is whether or not we are meeting the requirements of His promises, because He has conditions, doesn't He, for His promises?
He does.
We have to meet those conditions. Those conditions are simple, but one of them that's, I think, is neglected, and that is this. If you want to do God's work, you've got to, if you want to claim His promises, you've got to give yourself in service to Him. When you give yourself in service to Him, He will provide. There are other conditions. God says we have to obey, we have to pray, we have to ask in His name. We have to be not double-minded, it says in James chapter 1 verse 5.
Double-minded man.
We have to do that which is pleasing in His sight. There's a whole pile of conditions. If you look at all the promises, you can very simply, very quickly work them out. What are the conditions of His promises? But if you fulfill all of those conditions and you give your life in service to Him, then, well, what do you have to worry about?
I think one of the conditions that is often forgotten about is to have no will of your own concerning where God leads you, the direction He takes you in.
True.
But as God opens the door, as God leads the way, to be willing to go ahead.
That's it.
And not say, like the song says, Lord, I want to be a missionary. Take me anywhere. Just don't take me to Africa.
Exactly.
You know?
Rosemary, another thing is a lot of people have this idea that they have gifts, and that's true, and that they must focus on their gifts in order to do God's work. But actually, we need to forget ourselves, which includes our gifts, and focus on the needs of the people. Now, I would like to share more about this because there's so much to share, but the basic thought that I'm thinking is that, you know, if somebody wants to do God's work, don't be too conscious of yourself and your particular contribution. Because when you're doing God's work, you're often only the channel, the connection to somebody else who can do it better than you. And you may often do something like, for example, when we built the hangar, I didn't know how to build a hangar, but I asked God to help me to connect with people who did know how to build a hangar. And they're the ones that ended up giving all the advice, and they did it.
And they're very happy to do that, aren't they?
Yeah.
But it's not only that. It's if we concentrate on what we think our abilities are or our gifts are, we could be looking in completely wrong direction.
That's true.
And we can be stifling the Holy Spirit from using us.
Yeah.
Because the Holy Spirit can equip us if we make ourselves available with anything we're needing.
You know what? This is such an important topic. And I believe that there's a lot of people who want to be involved in God's work. They want to be missionaries. There's disabled people. There are people who are housebound, who can't get out, who want to know, what am I supposed to do? You know, what's my part in God's work? I really want to share more on this because I think it's such an important topic. And I believe there are certain keys that you can filter it down as to what is a missionary, and you can apply that to anybody. Can we talk about that more?
We
will do.
We'll talk about it.
We'll talk about it. You know, we've come to a point
just not
where,
on this program.
That's true. We've come to a point where really, if you're listening and you are really wanting to be a part of this work that's out there in Vanuatu, and I'm sure there are many other places in the world that are doing the same, I'd encourage you to take note. We have an address roll here. You can actually talk and contact Dr. Mark Turnbull and Naomi and share with you their thoughts and how maybe they think they may be able to help you, and that's very important. But just keep them in your prayers because it's very important. And you know, Layman Ministries plays a big part. And if you're in Australia, this is the way to contact. But if you're in America or somewhere else in the world, then Layman's Ministry is a means to help this ministry here in Vanuatu.
If you would like to contact Dr. Mark and Naomi Turnbull and support their work in Vanuatu, you may contact them in the following ways. Their mailing address is PO Box 777, Killarney, Queensland 4373. That's Post Office Box 777, Killarney, Queensland 4373. Contact them via email on 𝗨𝗺𝗀𝗀@gmail.com. That's the number 4, his hope, all one word, @gmail.com. Donate to them via their website. The address is www.𝗨𝗺𝗀𝗀𝗀com/give. Contact them today.
Thank you for writing those details down, but if you missed them, contact us at 3ABN Australia and we'll be more than happy to pass them on to you. And there's also the Layman Ministries website that you can go to, and you can contact you through that or donate to you through that website. It's www.𝗨𝗺𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀. For those on radio, I hope you've got that, www.𝗨𝗺𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀. Now, you were mentioning just before about how you'd like to share to other people about being a missionary. And we're going to do a whole new program with you on that.
Okay.
So I'm really looking forward to it. So watch out for that one too. It's going to be great. But Naomi, what has happened for you through doing this work for God? Is there any specific blessing or something you can just tell our viewers about how God
and
has
encourage
blessed you
them
through it?
importantly?
Yeah.
Yes, I wasn't highly trained. I didn't feel like I would be the right one to be chosen to be, running a school, establishing a school, or running as a school principal or anything like that. But if you're just willing to do God's will and you just accept what God brings to your notice that needs to be done, God can work through you, even if you don't think you have all the right talents or the right abilities or anything. So it's been very encouraging for me to see how God has worked through me to be a blessing to others, and I've grown a lot through the experience too.
That's right, and you do. The more you give, the more you get. I know
one of Naomi's strengths is picking up the pieces. Maybe I rush into things and leave a few details left out, but Naomi picks up the pieces. And when it comes to the school, we established the school not having the slightest idea how we were going to do it, and then finding out that there were so many things that had to be dealt with. And Naomi's done a huge part of that. She's basically carried the school on her shoulders for years.
God bless you.
And yeah, it's wonderful to see how God has changed us and turned us into leaders. You know, Naomi's hasn't been a leader in her past. I wouldn't have considered myself a leader, but I have to lead. And it's not something I've chosen, but it's just something that's God has put in front of me.
Equips you for.
Teaching me better management skills, and etc.
I know that when we went to Bangkok, because I'm a native English speaker, because I can't really speak anything else, I was made an English teacher for English language teacher for nursing students in Thailand. I had never taught. I'm not a teacher. But and I had to put a lot of work into it because I was given a textbook, go and teach, and teaching English grammar, and I loved it, and I got on so well with those students and became very close to them.
Yeah.
Just in the closing few moments, Mark, what's on your heart that you would like to tell our viewers?
I just want to reiterate just this main idea, and that is that God's promises are true. Everything that He's promised, He has proven that He's faithful. And what He's waiting for is, we're not waiting for Him, He's waiting for us. He needs people. You know, there's never been a time in Earth's history when God has needed people so desperately as He does now. And if we don't respond, I think He's going to have to choose some stones or something to do the work. And so let's let the Lord work through us.
You know, we're very happy to have you on the program. Look forward to having you again. Until next time, may God richly bless you.